I have as a guest today a dear friend and somebody you're going to love to hear from. This is Dr. John Jaquish. John is a biomedical engineer. He is a researcher. He's an inventor, and he's one of the truly creative thinkers in the world of health and vitality today. So it's John and I have been friends for several years because I became aware of his work early on. But first of all, John, welcome to Science for Life. I'm really thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, in our discussion today, I have spread the word through the channels of the people around the world that watch this show that we have some startlingly new information that has come from your research on health and vitality. So I want to get into that shortly. But before I do, I want to go backwards just a little bit and tell the story of how your early work as a student, getting your PhD in biomedical engineering, how that early work led to your discovery. So if you were to talk about your earliest work, how would you explain what you were doing when you were in school getting your degree?
Well, the best part about learning is you don't know what you're doing. It's just learning. So I was told, so a lot of my research started before I began the formal biomedical engineering education. And my PhD advisor told me that if I had decided to do the research that I did after completing my degree, I would have talked myself out of it. Because there's quite a bit of traditional education that teaches you how to think, what the process is. It really tends to stifle creativity. So I had a different approach. I had a different idea when it came to starting with bone density. When looking at what bone needed, I came up with something that hadn't been attempted before. And I thought it was the more simple solution of all the solutions that have been tried. So, and it also happens to work better. So I didn't have any sort of formal path of learning. It was just one thing after another. And I would have an idea and see, is there any evidence to support this idea? And if so, I can maybe run an experiment and go more to the point of what I'm thinking may work. So it was one thing after another where I kept on just finding the right evidence. It just kind of appeared in front of me.
The right evidence. I think this is something I know about you, John. You do think out of the box. And I know this whole show is going to take us through a journey of thinking outside the box where health and vitality are concerned. But your early research was about bone density. What led you to that, and where did that come from? Why was that of interest to you?
My mother. My mother. So she was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and she was given the statistics about hip fractures, and hip fractures have a similar mortality rate to breast cancer. So she came home and was very upset, and I thought, okay, well, let me look into this. And as I read about the dysfunction, losing bone mass, osteoporosis, I came to the conclusion that this shouldn't even be called a disease at all. It's a deconditioning of bone. Why don't we just recondition it? So instead of chemical is not found in nature or something like that, like bone grows with load on its axis. So this is the axis of my humerus bone, right? If I compress that bone like this, I can trigger growth. And we see that through high impact forces. So I wanted to create something that emulated high impact, but was in a controlled environment. So we could have the benefit of high impact without any of the risks. And so then that opened some doors and gave me some evidence when I looked at the differences in capability. That's really important. The differences in capability that people have in their impact ready range of motion versus their weaker range of motion.
Okay. I heard you tell this story not too long ago, and it fascinated me. Who has the high bone density in the athletic world?
Yeah, one type of athlete stands far above the rest, and it's gymnasts.
Gymnasts. And why would that be? Why do they have higher bone density?
So it's the rate at which they hit the ground. They contact the ground sometimes at 10 times their body weight. Now they injure frequently. It's a dangerous sport, but when they don't injure, because of the rate at which they hit the ground, the really explosive absorption of force, that triggers bone growth. So sometimes they'll have 2 standard deviations above normal, whereas most people who look at bone density, it's like 0 is normal, -1 is osteopenia, -2.5 is osteoporosis. Most people are only dealing in 0 to negatives, but gymnasts are +1 or +2.
Okay, so I see we got a problem here. We can't teach your mother to be a gymnast she was probably 60 years old. So you're thinking outside the box. Once you saw what needed to happen, that there needed to be a safe and effective way of compressing the bone. Where did that take you? Why not the drug avenue? Or where did you go to find the solution that changed the world of osteoporosis?
It just seemed obvious to me when I looked at the gymnasts and I looked at older people, and it's typically older people, but young people can have osteoporosis too.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody with like muscular dystrophy or something like that can't place any load or go through any impact on bone. So when I looked at the scenario, well, who is susceptible to this? And I understood that. Why don't we just compress the bone and emulate high impact forces? Mm-hmm. And so what I did, instead of telling my mother to be a gymnast, is I created a device that would just isolate those positions of naturally absorbing high impact.
And the technology is called OsteoStrong, and it's now revolutionizing the world of treating osteoporosis with literally tens of thousands of people who no longer have the problem because they found the side effects.
Yeah, it's just physical medicine. It's just making the body fix itself.
And we're going to come back to this again, because this is the key, I think, to the change that's happening in the world. Is you prefer physical medicine as opposed to drug-based medicine? Or what's your way of expressing that?
I think every physician takes an oath, the Hippocratic Oath. Mm-hmm. The first words are "do no harm." Mm-hmm. So very frequently when looking at treatment options, it's do the least amount of harm, right? There's impact or risk in anything. Even when telling somebody to go out and exercise, they could trip and fall. Mm-hmm. So there's risk to everything. So what I believe the physician is trying to do is looking at a strategy where they get the greatest potential outcome, mm-hmm. and the least risk of injury or side effect or anything negative. So when I look at what physical medicine has to offer, now there truly has to be a physical medicine solution.
Yeah.
For Parkinson's disease, there's physical medicine solutions. If you keep the body moving, there's plenty of evidence that shows that you can put Parkinson's in remission. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine runs a company that makes special fitness monitors for Parkinson's patients. Basically makes them move around every 45 minutes or something like that. So they keep it going, and they don't have the effects. So when looking at what physical medicine has to offer, there's almost no downside. So why not try physical medicine first? And I make this argument to every physician when sometimes physician says, well, we have a drug and it's been tested with 10,000 people in one study and 5,000 people in another study. And that's a lot of evidence. And then we have a physical medicine study that's only 55 people were in that study. So, we're going to go with the one with the larger amount of evidence. Well, human physiology has a lot of evidence behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Just period. You did learn about it in school, so it's a thing.
Well, it's clear we're moving towards physical medicine first.
Right.
We're in a.
My only argument to any physician is let's try the physical medicine option first. If that doesn't work, then we can look at other things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if people are kyphotic, very, very hunched over, that's what have an exaggerated kyphosis.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be able to engage in the same way that a healthy ambulatory person is with proper posture. So therefore, they may be challenged in some of the physical medicine options. Therefore, you may need to look at other options. But I am always encouraging physical medicine first.
Well, and as we do that, I want to highlight something I think is just remarkable, in the fact that through your inventions and of OsteoStrong and the machines that actually bring about that solution to osteoporosis, is osteoporosis a big deal around the world, or is it, how many people does it affect?
1 in 3 women, 1 in 5 males have agility fracture at some point in their life.
That's so what you're saying, that's pretty important.
Pretty important. And also, we have to be conscious of other musculoskeletal dysfunction. So osteoporosis is metabolic disease of bone.
Mm-hmm.
Metabolic disease of muscle is type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
They're very closely associated. So a lot of things that trigger one seem to trigger the other, and there's a lot of association between the two. So physical medicine can massively address both of those things. Nutrition also. Type 2 diabetes, too much refined sugar, or too much, but
bookmark that thought, because we're coming back to that. You just did something there, but I want to complete one thing, and that is.
Can I share one logistical thing?
Yes.
For the attendees, this is an interactive experience, and if you have a question that you're really burning to ask, on the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A section, and so please post your questions there, and then we'll answer the ones that we can get to.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi. So John, you, after years of developing this technology and basically solving the puzzle of osteoporosis, I know it hasn't been widely integrated into medical practice around the world yet, but we've got years and years of growth. How were you recognized by the establishment? You were the president, as I understand, of the Osteoporosis Association. What's the correct way of saying that?
No, I was on the board.
You were on the board, okay.
Board of directors of American Bone Health. That's the number one patient education institution worldwide. They have more patients than anyone else.
Well,
yeah, and I did that for about 3 years.
I've got to congratulate you, because what you're doing is outside the norm of traditional medicine, and yet you're being recognized because of the startling effectiveness of what you're creating. So osteoporosis aside, as big a problem as that is, there's something bigger that happened as a result of your work and research.
Sure.
I think this is just this is where you changed my life in introducing me to your newest invention a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And what research did you do that led to your development of the product you call X3 bar?
So the X3 really came out of a study a number of studies I had done and some observations I'd done on just looking at the differences of human capability. When we were doing these osteoporosis analyses, when I look at the published available research that I had been working on and publishes, and I'm reviewing it, and I'm thinking, people who we're testing is typically postmenopausal females. We're putting, depending on the published study, a look at between 7 to 9 multiples of body weight through their hip joint.
Mhm.
So 7, think about your body weight, multiply that by 7, multiply that by 9. Those are the kind of loads that people were dealing with comfortably, safely, easily. And that's what triggered the bone growth.
Yeah.
Well, when I thought about that, I thought, wow, like when I look at what athletes do, putting load through their hip joints, like let's find out what the difference in capability is, because ultimately I knew the American College of Sports Medicine, they keep large databases. They publish based on those large databases. What types of loads do people put through their hip joints? So I found some statistics that showed that the average individual puts the average avid exerciser puts 1.3 to 1.53 multiples of body weight through their hip joint. So, and this is not postmenopausal females, this is like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, or I should say the population that avidly exercises. So we've got postmenopausal females performing 7 times greater with greater force. Now, albeit different range of motion, albeit different intention of what they're trying to do. The takeaway here is humans, and I mean, this is rough because I'm comparing two different data sets and not necessarily like populations, but we have a compromised population that is outperforming from just a force perspective by 7-fold the average of the exercising population. So said a different way, we have 7 times the capability in our stronger range of motion than we do the weaker range of motion.
Okay.
And so I say, and like I thought that was like a real like simple breakdown, which would get the light bulb going for people. No. Well, I mean, it means a lot to the typical scientist, but
I get it.
right to regular people. But ultimately, here's what's so exciting. What it really means is when we exercise through traditional means, no wonder people are getting such poor results, because they're not able to use their capability. We're limited by the weaker range of motion. So if I'm doing a push-up or something, or I'm holding a weight close to here, I actually have 7 times the force production capability in the stronger range of motion, but no one ever uses that amount of force. So I realized that we needed to create something because we have variance in capability. Different capability depending on where the joint is. We need to come up with a system that has variance in force. So in a way, it's like tricking your body into lifting heavy, where you would never really want to lift heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So it only gets heavy where your capability is much greater, and then it gets really light where the joint's compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, like back here, if I'm pushing away from myself, like if I'm holding a bar and I'm back here, my shoulder joint is at risk, but I'm holding a very light weight here. So it's very safe. And then it begins to climb as I push away.
Let's turn this into information for somebody who doesn't lift weights and somebody who isn't particularly fit but wants to understand how powerful this information is. What you were just saying, if I were lifting something here, this is my weakest point.
Right.
But as I move away from myself lifting it, I get stronger and stronger as I go. And is that okay?
There's a mechanical advantage and engagement of muscle. The shorter the muscle becomes, the more sarcomere engagement. So there's like little proteins in the cell that look like this.
Mm-hmm.
As the cell becomes shorter, they do this.
Okay. So I'm going to try to put 2 pieces together here and tell me how wrong I am or how correct. You talked a minute ago about building muscle having impact in the disease model or in the health model. Mm-hmm. And I haven't spent my life in a gym, and it shows. I'm not built like a weightlifter, and yet I find that as I found an easy system for building muscle, it's affecting my health in profound ways I didn't understand.
Of course.
How
every organ in your body exists to supply muscle with what it needs.
Mhm.
So there's a symbiotic relationship there. Like, the healthier muscle is, the more it's putting demand on those organs, the better they have to perform, which is going to make you feel better, have more energy, make you happier.
Okay. And the listeners in this show clearly are not those most likely to leave this show and go join a gym as a result of the information you're sharing.
Right.
Heidi, you've put up a picture. Is this something you wanted to show us?
Yeah, I would love for everyone to see what it actually looks like for what they're talking about. And I think, and it will continue to be visible to everyone as I'm talking. So you see how where you are 7 times stronger, that full extension.
Right.
Okay.
So this is what they're talking about, and with how the resistance band looks and how the barbell is set up. And I think it'd be really awesome, John, for you next to talk about why it's set up the way that it is and how the design of the Olympic bar functions.
Right. So a lot of people who don't lift weights don't know what an Olympic bar is, but it's a very important tool that that weightlifters use. And what it is you can grab a hold of a bar and you can rotate your hand and keep grip on the bar, and the weight can stay static. So there's ball bearings inside. So what you see in this video is the user is moving his wrist, and there's some torsion there, but he's allowed to freely move it and never compromise his grip.
And you're also seeing that as the band stretches, it's as if the weight is getting heavier. So
right.
As he reaches out, he's actually activating muscles that wouldn't be activated if the weight weren't variable, or if the force weren't variable.
Exactly. Right. So, and where he is lifting right now, he's lifting more than what he's capable with the standard barbell and plates in a gym. He is bench press or chest pressing way more, like hundreds of pounds more force than he's normally capable of. And as you can see, it's pretty tiring.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Heidi. I think we're trying to make it a little more visible.
So similar to what we're doing with the osteoporosis treatment devices, this is a way where individuals can get a far increased level of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people go to the gym, especially adults, they end up not lifting very heavy because they don't want to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, from a standard fitness perspective, not heavy means not anything really is going to happen. So, like, your muscle changes based on an extreme environment, and that's true of all adaptive responses. Sort of like you can go outside on a sunny day in December and you're not going to get a tan, but on the 4th of July, a few minutes outside, you're going to stimulate something in your skin. So, and it's just intensity of exposure. So heavy is great, but we don't want to injure. So while maybe 17, 18-year-old kids will lift heavy weights and not really think about the consequences because they imagine they'll never get hurt,
mm-hmm.
They end up getting hurt eventually. And then they learn and they start training lighter, but then that's not effective. So this enables us to still get the benefit of the heavy loading without any of the risks.
Okay. I noticed we have a question coming in. I want to get to that, and I want to set it up a little bit before. Thank you, listeners, for asking your questions, because this is really important information. I want to make sure we all get to the information. But John, when you've talked again about muscles, I have walked. I used to be a runner. At 70 something, I don't run so much anymore, but I walk. So I've used that as my fitness. But I was stunned at the difference I started feeling in my body when I started building muscle using your X3 invention. I mean, it was stunning. I don't have words for it yet. But why was I feeling that difference? What's going on physiologically that made me realize that something was changing inside?
Well, you put your musculoskeletal system in an extreme environment and it had to change.
Mm-hmm.
More extreme than you would ever be able to expose it to than like a gym,
Mm-hmm.
because the weights were heavier. You were going to fatigue in stronger ranges of motion. That created many changes. So it's changes in the musculature. It's because muscle changes. Muscle is an engine that's running at all times, and it's always using calories.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting leaner.
Okay, I am getting leaner, and that's something that's it. But why am I getting? What's the body's response to building using that force?
Two reasons. One is you're building lean muscle.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't mean particularly giant muscle, because I know women are concerned about that. But when you build an amount of muscle mass, your basal metabolic rate changes, meaning you're using more calories just by existing, just by breathing, sleeping. You're using more. But the other one, which is why when designing the X3, I wanted to mimic a lot of what are called Olympic lifts or powerlifting, just lifting of a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then having the attachment point between the bar and the attachment point being on your person or on the ground, because you can attach the band to the ground. It's thick layered latex, so it's not the petroleum rubber stuff. This is tree latex, really powerful latex. So when you move those things through space, you're having to fire stabilizers, because as you have to stabilize anything that's not mounted. So if I pick up a heavy object, this is some stability firing to keep from, like tipping it or whatever on a whole level. Now, the heavier this becomes, the more stabilization firing is required to keep it level. So as the weight climbs, when an individual gets into the stronger range of motion, more stabilization firing happens. Okay. And last summer, Henry Alkire and I published, he's a young researcher, great guy, brilliant. We published a study where we aggregated 23 different data sets looking at stabilization firing and found that stabilization firing plus load yields a tremendous amount of growth hormone triggering. Now, growth hormone, when you're a child, grows you. Mm-hmm. When you're an adult, it's really more like human repair hormone. It fixes lots and lots of stuff. It makes your skin tighter and younger. It's a primary driver in reduction of cellulite, also hamstring development. I'll talk about that later. But the incredible performance changes that are seen from this. And so there was data in this study that showed people increasing growth hormone after one of these stabilization plus load sessions of over 2,000%. So that's going to make massive changes to the physiology.
So what you're telling me is that this is what's happened in my body is the less than 10 minutes of work I do 3 or 4 days a week is all I do. Yeah. But that has triggered a change in my physiology because of the dramatic increase in growth hormone.
Right.
Okay. So, and I can just report that as from my own disbelief that over an inch in my waist, a growing of my chest muscles for the first time in my life, and having a little added musculature in my arms, those are not minor changes. Those are actually life-changing, and we're talking about 6 or 7 weeks of very easy to perform exercises.
Right. And very safe. You don't need a spotter. You don't need to worry about, am I going to hurt myself? The repetitions are higher.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily have to worry about, well, I got to lift this really heavy thing like 4 to 5, whatever, 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not like that. The object is to get to a point of exhaustion,
Mm-hmm.
but the exhaustion is like a second right at the end.
Yeah. I'd be happy to share my transformation here. And this is 8 weeks of following your 12-week protocol, John. And this is amazing. My posture is way better. My shoulder caps are starting to grow. My partner said, "You're getting a butt lift." Hey. Just by following your protocol. And there's ab definition where I'm not sucking in my tummy. This is just standard relaxed where you can see my abs now where you couldn't 8 weeks ago.
Right.
That's what growth hormone looks like.
I like the way you're tracking your progress. It's important to notice things like that, and also I'm not necessarily the best to use myself as an example, especially when talking to women, because women think, well, I don't want to look like that guy. So thank you for putting that together. Many women have told me they're afraid to grow muscle, but then they want a butt like Kim Kardashian's, and I tell them, well, that's muscle.
Mm-hmm.
That like you can grow that muscle, and yeah, you can have incredible feminine shape by developing the glutes, the cellulite on the back of the legs. This is one of the most interesting subjects because I see women who exercise, whether they exercise a lot or a little, but they get a little bit of quadricep development. That's the front of the thigh. So they build the front of the thigh, but not the back of the thigh where the hamstring is. And that's where they see the cellulite. So they're working hard on the muscle that's on the front of the thigh, but they're complaining about the back of the thigh, but they're not working that muscle because a lot of them don't know how. Mm-hmm. So with the X3 protocol, we have them doing split squats and what's called a deadlift. It's an Olympic, movement. It's not going to kill you. So some people are a little put off by the name deadlift, but it means you're picking up a dead weight off the ground. And so that engages the hamstrings. And so when the back of the thigh, the muscle on the back of the thigh starts to grow a little bit, well, the cellulite begins to disappear because the cellulite's here and the muscle's here. As the muscle begins to push out, the skin stretches and it's all in the right proportion. Mm-hmm. So are you going to show us there you go. You gonna play that video?
Yeah, I'll play. Yeah, it's visible when I'm talking. Okay. So yeah, that's a deadlift. Super simple. You're just standing up. You do need to have good mechanics with your chest and in your head and neck, so you don't kink your neck. You don't put anything out in that. And I teach that in the 3-week program. After someone purchases the X3, I share with them proper mechanics and safety training so that the X3 is really simple and easy to use.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And Heidi, would you do some looking and see if you can find an overhead press example? Because I want to use that as my aha moment because John, you just said something so powerful. I want to make sure everybody gets it, and that is that the huge growth hormone increase comes from firing stabilization muscles.
Stabilization plus load.
Okay, so stabilization. If I did yoga, I would trigger my stabilization muscles, right?
Right. So like a lot of exercise experts, exercise scientists have not been fans of yoga for anything other than flexibility. Mm-hmm. But then a lot of yoga fans, yoga instructors notice that they don't do as much cardiovascular exercise as others do, or they don't do the same types of things to stay lean, yet they still stay lean. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of stabilization firing. So you have hormones working for you when you do yoga.
And what you just said, I want everybody to hear. You said it's fire and stabilization muscles, but you get this huge increase in growth hormone when stabilization muscles are fired under load. So what we have to do is to figure out how. And I did this particular exercise is when we met several weeks ago, and I did this one exercise. And all of a sudden, light bulbs went off in my head, and I realized, Heidi, would you play the video so everybody can see what happened?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, so this is an overhead press, and this is my heavy weight for me. So yeah, getting the camera straight, and this is where it's like, this is not exactly easy, but this is what requires a lot of stabilization, and you will see in a second. There we go. So
Okay.
my core muscles like shaking as I'm going in an overhead press. You see that?
Stop it right there for just a second.
Yeah, I'll go back right there.
Awesome. Now, when I was in that position and I had the band, there was, I don't know how much weight it felt like, but it felt like it was a lot of weight. My core muscles were on firing. And that's when I finally understood why this trims the body, why it has the effect it does, is because I was challenged. Although it looked like a rubber band and something simple, I was more challenged in that one motion than I had been in my 70-some years. I had never, not being a weightlifter, I had never been in that position before.
Right.
I had never triggered those core muscles. And thank you, Heidi. You've. I hope people can understand. If you just imagine yourself with a 100-pound weight over your head and all the muscles that have to stabilize in order to hold you securely.
Well, I kind of question that because I did have 100-pound weights over my head. I did CrossFit for 3.5 years, Doug,
Mm-hmm.
and that sucks. But when I was with a heavy barbell and I'm doing snatches or overhead press, and it was super heavy. But when I am pressing this, and this is over 100 pounds of force with the equivalent of the band, it's not that hard, and it was shocking. To me, it's like this big.
Let me tell you why this is more effective.
Please do. We're just
because you can get to the fatigue points where you're holding a higher weight many more times, and you can sustain that position for longer. Therefore, more stability firing. Like, let's say you can lift a 100-pound barbell from the ground to over your head. What that really means is you probably have a 300-pound capability. But you don't know that, and you can't get there.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you could do, this is not what I would recommend, but you could use the X3 and a heavier band and get the 300 pounds in the peak range of motion. But you don't need to do that. What you can do is get the 100-pound band and go to a far deeper level of exhaustion by hitting that top point over and over and over again. So you're going to fatigue there, and then you can diminish that range of motion and go to fatigue in the other, where you're weaker. So you end up just doing this, where you're dealing with a lightweight and fatiguing the muscle completely. And that's something you just can't do with weights.
Okay, I get it. You can't do it. What I do on a 3 or 4 day a week basis, I couldn't do with weights. I wouldn't want to do with weights, but it is transformative. And what you're saying is it is the best way in your research or that you found for dramatically increasing growth hormone in the body. So, and I get that this is going to continue to build stronger muscles, but what are the other benefits of having the growth hormone influx in my body?
Joint recovery, skin recovery. Growth hormone tends to make people, it's seen as the anti-aging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when it's prescribed as a drug, anti-aging drug, The good news is when prescribed as a drug, there's questions is like, is it really safe? No one's ever proven that it's not safe, but that's not how studies work. They don't do a study to see if they can hurt somebody. Right? So, I mean, we'll never have that research, but there's a lot of concerns because there's receptor sites for growth hormone in every cell in the body. However, when the body is placed in an extreme environment, the receptor sites upregulate while the hormone is being secreted. So the hormone level goes up, and so there's more hormones coming in, and there's more receptors, so they can find each other. Okay. So in the tendons, the ligaments to improve biomechanics, the skin, all of those things that are going to make people have more energy, repair faster, things like that.
All right. John, I realize you have done something that's just like solving the puzzle of osteoporosis. You have backed into, it seems to me, that you've backed into something that's truly revolutionary in our understanding of fitness, our understanding of health. Because I don't know what age it happens, probably in the 30s or 40s, our growth hormone production is diminished because we typically diminish our physical.
You don't place yourself in the same environments. Now, in that study, in that meta-analysis that was published last summer, those effects were seen with elderly people too.
John, can you, we have a question here about if a person is 85 years old, is this recommended? Please share how old, the age of your mother.
She may be mad at me if I do
that. Is she in that range of age?
Over 80 years old. Yeah. So it's people can use it with proficiency, no matter their age. It's relatively pain-free, relatively ambulatory. The requirements are pretty low, and the good news is your movement can improve as you use the device. Yeah.
Yeah, I have experience there with a neighbor across the nearby who saw my enthusiasm for this new toy and has found a spark of regeneration in his life and is just beginning his journey with the X3 and is quite excited about it.
Yeah.
And Heidi, have we missed any of the questions that are coming in? Are we doing good? Okay. So John, what you've told us so far is there's a dramatic increase in growth hormone, and that has profound effects beyond building muscles. That actually has vitalizing effects, and I won't go into deeper, but there's a whole part of the anti-aging medicine that's built on injections of growth hormone. What you're talking about, though, is endogenous. This is growth hormone from your own body created with your own glands. What are the advantages there?
Well, when your body creates it, your body's not going to create a hormonal secretion that's going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. There's really no, body's self-preserving. Mm-hmm. It's not self-destructive.
Okay.
So when growth hormone is upregulated, you can be assured that the receptor sites in the proper places are going to be upregulated as well. So the growth hormone goes where it's supposed to go.
Is there any indication in the literature that an injection of growth hormone suppresses our body's own natural production of growth hormone? Am I pushing?
There's conflicting research on this, so I just can't give you a really conclusive answer. Now, like certain other hormones like estrogen and testosterone, you take exogenous testosterone or estrogen and you suppress your own. But like, I'm probably going to ruin somebody's day here, but like there's a lot of things that you do that people do that screw up the natural secretion of things. Let me give you an example. If you use chapstick a lot, you don't have the natural oils in the skin of your lips anymore. You can build a bag, but like your skin is self-lubricating. So if you give if you put some type of lubricant there, well, then that piece of skin doesn't see a reason to trigger that anymore.
Okay.
So that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. What we want to do is, if you have dry skin, when I tell somebody this, hi, I have dry skin all the time. Well, have you tried eating more fat? Have you looked at different things, or maybe you're having dry skin because you use a lousy shaving cream? You know, like there's a lot of different other approaches, and we could be really funny. So we want to lubricate our skin after we put a solvent on our skin to destroy all the natural oils. Then we take a petroleum oil and put it on our skin. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. It's that's another rabbit hole we can go down. But ultimately, you want to trigger your body to do what it's supposed to do. That's the ultimate.
Okay. And you're telling me that my resistance through all of my years to doing physical exercise, where muscle building was concerned, was restricting my own production of my health.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody should be as strong as they can be. Like,
okay.
You should just be like on everyone's to-do list. Like, you want to get a good night's sleep every night.
Okay.
Like, that's something you want to do. You want to be as strong as possible.
And so your research is I can't help but say this is wildly profound, that less than 10 minutes a day can actually have this kind of impact on your overall health. And I'll speak about this for as long as I have breath, because we're in a world that it's time for us to take responsibility for our health and realize that it's in our hands to do, to take the wise steps. I changed my diet years back. I've changed, I stopped smoking. I did all kinds of changes, but the idea has never presented itself that I need to build muscle in order to be strong. I also put on our website, our Facebook page a couple of days ago, an article that said your brain shrinks if you're not getting physical exercise. Wait a minute.
So Bruce Lipton likes using the car analogy when talking about the human body. So can you still hear me?
Yes.
You lose me? Or are we? Okay. So Bruce talks about how you can take a car apart and put it back together and drive it away. But if you take a human apart and put them back together, nothing happens. The individual is no longer alive. And why that's important is that every system that we have in our body is dependent on other systems. They're all related. So the musculature and the brain are related. The heart, the lungs, the blood flow to your fingertips and your toes, the furthest points away from your heart. That's all related. And if we treat it as such, you only have one body. And it's like a thing that people say but don't really pay attention to. You know, well, I have my health. Well, make sure you keep it. So like these things are the most important things we can be doing for our happiness moving forward. Taking care of your health, being as strong as possible.
Well, we're going to be carrying this message out to the world, because taking care of your health used to be more complicated, and today it's getting easier. And I think that's true across the board of things that it's important to understand. Right now, it's easier to step into a vital, active, loving life. We just have to use the technology that's coming. And I appreciate you being the channel for this kind of information, John.
Thanks.
I also want to talk too about, you realize I'm not a fitness advocate, and this is it. I hope my discomfort in this area shows a little bit to everybody, because it's just not an area of my focus in life. I thought that my life between my ears was what the body was, just to carry my head around. The fact is, the body has a vital purpose, but you're from a different world than I am. You've been a bodybuilder for most of your life. What do other bodybuilders say? What do, they're invested in, their weights and all this kind of stuff. What have they had to say about your creation of the X3?
Great question. Definitely getting a mixed response. A lot of, as with any sport, recreational, let's call it recreational weightlifting, because I think, like the term bodybuilding, there are people who treat their body as a sculpture and then they go stand on a stage and that's what a bodybuilder is. There's a lot more people that follow the sort of aspects of that to improve their physique and their health, and aren't necessarily going to go stand on a stage, and they're not necessarily treating their body as a sculpture. They just want to be strong. And there's millions of people like that. The competitive bodybuilder, not so much. They're definitely a much higher level of what they're trying to do. So that community I've got some mixed responses. I don't want to beat up on anybody, but I like the smarter people in the industry. Ben Pekulski, for example.
Yeah.
There's a couple others that I'm working with. I'm not quite ready to talk very much about yet. Phil Hernan is an amazing guy, former Mr. USA, has a nutrition company now, and he really helps people get the most out of the human body without turning to any sort of performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
Training the body to fix itself. Very, very much thinking along the same lines. What I notice is that the most receptive audience is not the young guys who are lifting weights and who want to go win a bodybuilding championship, or they're plan on being having the best physique at the barbecue. There's that's the thing when you're younger. People really start to pay attention after they have one injury. Because the 18, 19-year-old guys who start lifting heavy and they think, oh, I'll never get hurt because I'm awesome. That's youth, right? Yeah. I don't know who said it, but the problem with youth is it's wasted on young. Somebody said that. Maybe it was Winston Churchill. Those guys are not paying attention. I think part of it is that they identify with doing something dangerous. They're very proud that lifting heavy weights is not something everybody can do, and they're very proud that's their identity. So taking their identity away from them by saying, hey, there's a way I can grow more muscle and go through less risk and accomplish the same objectives. And I've never seen strings of profanity attached together when by these guys, because it's just like offending their lifestyle. But the guys who have had an injury and they know, wow, like if I get a serious injury, I won't even be able to exercise it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So risking an injury is just not something they're interested in doing. So when we talk about how with X3 you can have even better success than you can with standard weights, and you lower that chance of injury, they are listening.
Well, I want everybody to hear me clearly. Please go to x3home.com and look for yourself at what's here as a tool for your health, because there's something vital, and when new science comes in that tells us there's an easy way, a safe way, and an incredibly powerful way, quick way to rebuild the vitality that age has taken away from us, it just makes sense to arm yourself with the facts. But I also want you to know that there is wisdom here that you can carry forward, whether you join the X3 revolution or not. There's wisdom here and understanding that you're building your physical body strength is vital to your longevity, your health, and your production of human repair hormone in your body. So, John, I'm just blown away by what you're doing. You just talked about Ben Pakulski, and I had the privilege of listening to a podcast you did just a few weeks ago, or what was that? The gentleman that you did that call with?
Yeah, that was Ben.
Okay, that was Ben.
He likes science.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a competitive bodybuilder. I think he just retired, but I think he may have been competing for something like 16 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was contest weight right around 300 pounds, muscular guy. And you can see every muscle, very lean. So while he was in that sport, he realized that understanding the scientific research, the sports science research around athleticism, triggering muscle growth hormones, was much better than just repetitively going to the gym and doing what all the other guys are doing. Mm-hmm. So a better understanding. And one thing that's important, and this is just general advice for anybody, don't look at what a celebrity is doing or what an athlete is doing, because they may be doing 20 things and only talking about one.
Mm-hmm.
When a study is done, variables are taken out of it. So they'll take two groups of individuals and compare them, and they'll make sure that those individuals are not taking performance-enhancing drugs, have a similar diet, are similar enough where when something is added over here to test and something is over here to test, that we're just isolating that variable. And so I think Ben is one of the individuals who really understands what the objectives are with academic research, isolating variables, finding out why something really happens. And the guys who are not interested in research and just are interested in what the pros are doing, they don't even really know what the pros are doing. They know what the pros are saying they're doing.
Right. What is the research that actually was done in upstate New York? Can you tell me the name of the university and the
Cornell athletes? Yeah. So Cornell athletes were tested. They took two groups of Cornell athletes, so males and females. But the reason it's important to point that out is they were already highly trained. Mm-hmm. So it's harder to get a result, a pre to post result, with somebody who's already athletic.
Right.
So somebody who doesn't exercise, they're going to have much greater adaptations. They're going to gain lean muscle and lose body fat faster than somebody who's already an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So I point that out because I want people to understand that if it can work for an athlete, it can work for the regular person even better.
Mm-hmm.
Not the other way around. Because I think somebody goes, well, that study was on athletes and I'm not an athlete, so it doesn't mean anything. So they took two groups of people and they tested their strength in the beginning of the study, and then they tested their strength at the end of the study. And one group lifted regular weights as they had been, and they gained a tiny bit of strength through this, I believe it was 24 weeks. Mm-hmm. And the test group used variable resistance, used a protocol very similar to X3, mm-hmm. where they were holding much more force in the stronger range of motion than they were in the weaker range of motion.
Right.
And they grew muscle. They manifest. I mean, the test was strength, but a stronger muscle is a larger muscle. So they developed 3 times the amount of gain that the regular group did, which is why the product is called X3.
That's great.
Yeah, your gains are 3 times faster.
Yeah. John, I can't believe the time is getting away from us so fast, but there's a couple of things. Dave Asprey of Bulletproof Coffee fame recently called this one of the best biohacks ever. And I know he is sharing this technology. I've seen his podcasts a couple of times now where he's, who are some of the others that are in your world who have seen and understood this technology and encouraged you?
Tony Robbins has been working with osteostrong.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a big fan of X3, and the X3s are going to be available at osteostrong locations to use and for people to understand how it works. Like with osteostrong, addressing bone density and increasing bone density for athletic performance, for fracture prevention, or just greater health. And then from an added health and aesthetics standpoint, X3 is offered there. And Tony's been very, very excited about getting that rolling. And,
Well,
the partner in osteostrong.
Heidi, I know the chat box is kind of swelling. Is there something there that we need to address with John, something that will be helpful to the group listening?
I think most of those questions have been answered already. We just have one person who is an avid fan of X3,
Mm-hmm.
who's I've been training him, and his whole body shape and posture are changing in a matter of only 6.5 weeks. It's been beautiful.
Somebody besides me, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, John, this is the beginning of a process. I am so thrilled that you take your time to come and share with the world. But more importantly, I hope you recognize that what you're doing is profound beyond words. You are bringing forward a level of understanding of how easy it is to build healthy bodies that actually makes these our lives more valuable. And I really congratulate you for the work that you started with. And I'm sure this is not the end. This is a continuing process. But yeah. X3 is, I'm going to call it a revolution, because it's going to revolutionize the way we deal with fitness and the way we deal with our own personal health. Yep. Is there any point that we've missed in our conversation that's vital for our listeners to hear about today?
No. I look forward to helping answer the questions over the coming days and weeks.
Well, I wish you incredible success, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the revolution. And whether it's whether I look at it personally or look at it as what fuels my life is giving people information that will allow them to live the fullness of the beautiful lives that we have here. Heidi, do you have anything you'd like to add? Thank you for being the moderator and a guide through this process.
Oh, I'm just so grateful for you, John. Like, really, from the depth of my heart, you have changed my relationship with my body that I didn't think was possible. Because I was a student athlete, I was super fit, but then after getting injured so many times, I was like, well, I guess I lost my dream body, and it's coming back. So thank you. And I'm the last part would be like, I would be honored to be there with you on the call as you change the shape of your body, sculpt your body, and celebrate with you your progress. So though my body isn't perfect, and I'm showing before and after pictures of myself, and that's really vulnerable, like, wow. But I'm just celebrating the changes that have happened, and it's only a short 8 weeks.
Awesome.
That's great.
How it works.
It's exciting to be back in the Science for Life world, and the new format we're using, I'm thrilled with. We are going to send everybody who's registered for this show a copy, and I ask you to please send it out to your friends. And the revolution happens because you and I are the source of that information. We move it forward. And as we bring other guests onto the show, I hope you'll continue to do the same thing and be the community of change that we've always been. Know that you're genuinely appreciated and loved. Heidi, thank you. And for all of you listening to Science for Life, we have an exciting journey ahead of us, and I'm thrilled to be with you. Hope you'll join us again on the next show with Science for Life.